Okay, so welcome everyone. Nice to see everyone again. This is week 3 of 4. We have one more week to go. So as usual, let's bring our hearts to silence and saddha and pay homage and gratitude to the Buddha and our teachers. Iti piso bhagavārahang samma sambuddho vijjacharana sampanno sugato lokavidhu anuttaro purisa dhamma sarati satta deva manu sanang buddha Bhagavati Sava Katho Bhagavata Dhammo Samdetiko Akadiko Ehi Pasiko Panaiko Pachatang Vedita Bhovinyo Kiti Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Ujupatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Nyaya Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Samichi Patipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Yadidan Chattari Prisayugani Atta Purisa Puggalaye Sabhagavato Savaka Sangho Ahuneyo Pahuneyo Dakkineyo Anjali Karaniyo Anuttarang Punya Ketang Lokasati. Okay. So, okay. So, here's what we are going to do today. The main topics will give a little bit of an introduction to the Noble Eightfold Path and speak about the first two components of the Noble Eightfold Path, which is Sila and Samadhi. We'll speak a little bit of the Brahma Viharas, do a guided meditation Q&A. But before that, especially on Vanessa's request, we'll spend a little bit of time on the interactive discussion from the interactive pieces from the previous weeks. Okay. So just to kick it off, as we were waiting, there was a question from Oshi, and Oshi said, could you please talk about the difference between reincarnation and rebirth? So yeah, that's a good place to start. We spoke about Kamma, we spoke about rebirth a little bit last week. So I'll give you my understanding of this. Again, this is what I've gleaned. This is not necessarily a theoretical, I don't know if you'll find written evidence for it in the canon, but this is just what I've gleaned. So first of all, the word reincarnation, right, is suggestive that there's something that incarnates. So usually that word is used in schools and philosophies where there's something that moves from one body to another, that moves from one life to another. So you'll find a lot of Mahayana, well, not a lot, some Mahayana schools, some Vajrayana schools, a lot of the Hindu schools using the term reincarnation. The word rebirth is used more in Theravadan terms, where we look at this movement as a movement of, so the Mahayanists would say, and the Vajrayana schools would say, that there is a movement of consciousness from one life to another. Again, this is very high level. I'm not going into the different schools. There have been battles fought over this. There have been schisms based on this. So I'm giving you a very high level view of this. So generally, schools that believe that there is something that moves from one life to another, one body to another, use the word reincarnation. Schools like the Theravada school, which believe that it is a continuum. So at the end of life, there is what is called the Bhava Sankara. And this Bhava Sankara has a record of all the Kamma, record of all our inclinations and things like that, that moves on and goes and enters another body. So they call it rebirth. And again, it's important to know that rebirth in the Theravada context, especially in the context of dependent co-arising, paticca samutpada, it can be from moment to moment. So Amarasiri gets reborn moment to moment, right? Whenever there is a new thought, whenever there is a new desire, I get reborn, right? So it's used in both terms. The Pali term for it is Puna Bhava. The Sanskrit term for it is Punar Bhava. So Bhava is to become, and Puna is again. So that's all it is. Becoming again, becoming again, becoming again. Could be moment to moment, could be lifetime to lifetime. So these are words. The distinction of it, this is what I've gleaned. So I hope that's useful. Okay, great. So, so last week, this is where we left off. Said share some misconceptions about Kamma you've encountered. So if one person from each of the breakout rooms could talk about that, that'll be great.
No pressure.
Or if anyone wants to jump in.
It's good comment.
I'm 81 years old. I can't remember what I did this morning, let alone what we talked about in the breakout group.
But Vanessa, this is being done on your request. So you have to participate. That's not 81 years old, you're 81 years young.
I do have one question that came up for me. Well, there's a few others, Bente, about when you were going through the different forms of Kamma, bad, bright, or dark, bright, neither, and mixed, and you were, I believe, saying that the mixed bright karma is very different from that, and mixed karma and karma that's neither are things that we should be very cautious about and very watchful about.
Yes. So pay attention, pay attention more. So sorry, but had you finished your question? Or?
Well, I was also thinking about it. That's one part of it. I was also, what came up as well is the whole idea of merit and merit making. And I think it's something we've talked about before. There are many people that will participate in things and will do certain things with the objective that this is making me creating more merit. Or another term I've heard is I'm burning Kamma. So maybe you could comment
Sure.
about those things.
We'll talk about that. I actually left that out on purpose, but okay. So let's start with an example. So 4 kinds of kamma: bright to bright, dark to dark, mixed, and then neither. So bright to bright and dark to dark are easy. Bright
Yeah.
to bright is, let's say, you're out walking, you're feeling good, the mood of the mind is pleasant, you're free, you're receptive, you're open, you're expansive. All of a sudden, you see an old lady with heavy bags trying to cross the street. So you go and give her a hand, right? So bright to bright. From a bright mind state, bright intention, a bright action is performed. Because the intention is wholesome and the action is wholesome, the result is going to be punya. The result is going to be meritorious. Same example, let's say you're walking, you're grumpy, your heart is constricted, you're in a bad mood, you don't want to be bothered by the world. You see the same lady with the same bags crossing the street. So instead of having the intention of going and helping, you say, you know, why is this lady doing this? Doesn't she know that these bags are too heavy for her? This is rubbish. I'm not going to get involved in this. You walk away, right? From dark to dark. Dark intention, dark kamma, walking away without helping. And the kamma also is that moment of resistance, that moment of what in Pali is known as Vera, that moment of alienation, that moment of pushing away, that has a kamma of its own, dark to dark. Mixed is, let's say there's a katina at the sarana and you're bringing some robes to offer to the Sangha. Your intentions are very good, your intentions are very pure, and during the ceremony, you present the robes and the Sangha accepts it, and the Sangha is very grateful and Lumpur praises you for your generosity and you feel really good, right? Or the same thing happens, you bring robes, it's presented, and the Sangha receives it, no one says anything. So in that moment, you get disappointed. So in both of these examples, it's mixed kamma, because the wholesomeness is the generosity aspect. The slight tinge of the unwholesome is wanting recognition, right? So it's a very good action, but there's always a slight wanting recognition. I'm not saying this judgmentally, right? This is how life is. Unless someone has complete understanding, unless someone is completely enlightened, most of our kamma has a mixed quality to it. Right? Whether we recognize it or not, whether we know it or not, there's always some element of what's in it for me. I need this recognition. I need a pat on the back. Or when I'm expecting a pat on the back and I don't get it, then the disappointment that hits me. Okay? Mixed. Neither, let's say you're sitting down to meditate. You're meditating. And the intention is good, right? But there are some hindrances that come up when you start nodding away. Now, that's neither good nor bad. There's really no kamma when you sit and watch your breath. You're just watching your breath. The intention is a wholesome one, and that has a kamma, but the action, that has a vipaka, that has a result. The action itself of sitting and watching the breath does not have a vipaka. So, but here's the opportunity, and this is why this neither kamma, that is neither bright nor dark, is the opportunity for release. Because at that moment, there's neither a debit nor a credit that's getting added to the account. So it's a moment of great value. It's also a moment of an opportunity to allow the hindrance to manifest, to allow us to be aware of the hindrance, be aware of whatever is going on, and not follow it with the desire to get rid of it, with the desire to change it. Okay. And there's a lot more that Ajahn Suchita says in that book, so I'd encourage reading that section. But from a very high level, this is the thing. Now, about merit making and burning off of kamma, human beings are human beings, right? Just as we said that most of our actions are mixed, there are two terms that appear in the Pali Suttas all the time, amisa and niramisa. Amisa is expecting a result. Niramisa is not expecting anything, right? So expecting a result out of an action, which is mixed, not expecting any result out of the action, doing that action purely for the joy of doing. A very wholesome, very high level of motivation, which lacks desire, which lacks ego, which lacks selfing, all of these things. So obviously, the Buddha praises Niramisa a lot over Amisa. But Amisa or Niramisa, both of these have their positive fallouts, positive results, positive vipaka, right? So anything that's done that's good, that conforms with sila, that has a root of generosity, that can bring the mind to gladness, to silence, to a wholesome level state of being, something that is wholesome. We discussed wholesome and unwholesome last time. All of these things are meritorious actions. So the idea of making merit is when you actually make up your mind to do an action that's meritorious, right? So that is culturally a very strong piece, whether it's Buddhism or Hinduism or Sikhism, even in the Abrahamic religions, right? Like all the charity work that Christians do, that the Jews do, and Islam during the month of Ramadan and things like that. Every religion has this idea of good intentions resulting in good actions and sharing goodness with a big group of people, a group larger than yourself or your immediate circle. Okay, does that answer your question, Marjorie? Okay. Okay, great. Anyone else? Any misconceptions of Kamma you've encountered? Going once, going twice? I guess not. Okay, so does anyone want to share about watching the breath or watching the sense of self? Okay, guess not. So Sugandhi, yes, Sugandhi. Where's Faye, can you unmute Sugandhi?
Thank you. I actually just today had acupuncture and so I've been practicing the breath, noticing my body, top to bottom, bottom to top. And today during acupuncture, some points were quite painful. And so I decided to practice this as I was lying down. And I found the release was tremendous, and I did not
Yeah.
expect that. I was really shocked, and I thought, oh, I had nothing to lose, and I was like, oh, this is so painful, and it's tingling and all this feeling, and I was like, I couldn't believe it. I don't know if it was just one time fluke or what, but it was just incredible, and I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Well, wonderful, Suganti, and we're all very happy for you. Here's the trick, though. If you try and replicate it next time, you'll be disappointed. So again, like this time, just what you said, right? You had nothing to lose. If you maintain the same attitude, then the results can be quite similar. But if you try and replicate the same level of release, then what happens is that craving comes in. And when the craving comes in, immediately there's stress. With stress, there's tightness in the body, and your release is not going to be that good. So just watch out for that. But that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, please.
So in that case, is it a mind thing? Like, did my release come because I had very low expectation and the breathing calmed me down and it was a mind thing? Whereas if I had high expectation, then it's more like I'm never going to be satisfied with whatever happens, even if it is the same level of release that I'm getting as this first time. But because of my context of the mindset, is that what it is?
It is. You're kind of, yeah, I mean, it is. It could be that. It could also be that your body is just not so during from session A to session B, your body might just be in a different place.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you so much.
So yeah, so don't try and analyze this too much. The idea is just to be wary of expectations, because expectations automatically cause stress and can lead to disappointment. So if we are wary of that, we've done what we need to do. Okay,
Thank you.
great. You're welcome. Thank you, Suganti. Okay, so if there's no one else, we'll carry on. Okay. So we'll talk about the Noble Eightfold Path. So when we looked at the Four Noble Truths, we said that there's the truth of suffering. The second noble truth is that suffering has an origin. Third noble truth is the prognosis. Suffering has an end. And finally, the prescription is the Noble Eightfold Path. So again, everything that applies to why the noble truths are noble applies to why the path is noble too, in that it's noble in its content, it's noble in its intention, it's noble in its action. It is by itself noble, and it ennobles anyone who associates with it, practices it, works with it, integrates it, applies it, etc., etc. So usually when you look at the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the Buddha always starts with Panya. So it goes Samma Ditti, Samma Sankappa, then Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta, Samma Jiva. Finally, the heart qualities, Samma Vayama, Samma Sati, and Samma Samadhi. Today, we are going to be doing a little bit of a high-level view on Sila and Samadhi. And next session, we'll look into Panya. And generally, the Noble Eightfold Path is broken up in these three ways. Sila, that is wholesome action motivated by good intentions, motivated by mindfulness. So it's a combination. Sila is good actions of speech, good actions of body. The precursor for which are good thoughts, and good thoughts coupled with a mindfulness. Okay, so that's how you define kind of Samma Vacha, Samma Kamanta, Samma Ajiva. We'll talk about each one in a moment. So Sila, then you have Samadhi, which is generally the meditative aspects. It's also called Bhavana, cultivation, experiencing. So these deal with more what we do on the cushion or on the mat. We sit down and we close our eyes and we sit and meditate and whatever goes on there. So Sila is bodily action. Samadhi is cultivation of the heart and the mind. Finally, Panya is the view that we have on life. Wisdom, faculties that of insight, faculties of vision, etc., etc. Okay, so today we'll start with Sila. Samma Vacha, usually translated as right speech. Samma Kamanta, right action. Samma Ajiva, right livelihood. Samma Vayama, right effort. I like to call it right endeavor, because I think endeavor is a more it's a less demanding word and it's more broad and more encompassing. Samma Sati is right mindfulness. Again, the other way of looking at Sati is to hold something in mind. So availability, remembering, recollecting, many, many aspects to Sati. And finally, Samma Samadhi, right collectedness. Okay. So we're going to be talking about these two. Next week, we'll talk about Sammaditi, right view, Samma Sankappa, right thinking. Before we move any further, we always hear this word Samma being translated as right. So is this right as in opposition to wrong? In some cases, yes, right? But in general, the Pali word Samma and the Sanskrit word Samyak, it means anything that is holistic, anything that is full, anything that is appropriate, right? And a good way of understanding Samma is to look at its opposite. So the opposite of Samma is Miccha. Miccha in Pali, Mithya in Sanskrit. So if you have Samma Vacha, right speech, there's Miccha Vacha. Wrong, okay, I'll say wrong speech, but we'll come to that in a minute. You have Sammaditi and then you have Micchaditi. That is right view and then wrong view. But Miccha or Mithya, as the word itself suggests, it means something that is clouded, something that is deluded, something that is not clear, something that's muddled, something that's confused. Okay, so then we look at Mithya and we know, okay, Mithya is something that's clouded, that's deluded. Therefore, Samma should be something that is not clouded, not deluded, something that is rooted in clarity. Right? And that is how this whole idea of Samma has to be understood and approached in this context of the Noble Eightfold Path. Because if we don't, then we will always be prone towards looking at this is right, this is wrong, what I'm doing. Oh, I did this right, so that gives me a sense of ego. I did that wrong, that gives me a sense of judgment. So I'm constantly fluctuating between happiness and grief, constantly fluctuating between wanting to do the right thing, wanting, having this kind of fierce rejection of making mistakes. And all of these are very stressful, right? They're not helpful at all. But then if we just look at Samma as something that's appropriate, something that's holistic, something that is complete, then it removes that level of judgment. So it's not so much a right versus wrong, but it's more an action that has a value because of the rightness that it inherently possesses. Right? So very often, how we actually, and Ajahn Amaro, I learned this from Ajahn Amaro. He says, so usually when, okay, imagine this is a pendulum, right? So this is right, then the opposite is wrong, right? So this is not samma and this is not mithya. In our minds, we think this is samma and this is mithya. But samma actually exists at this point. It exists at the fulcrum. Because if the fulcrum is not there, then the pendulum will not function, right? So it is something that brings in a sense of balance, something that allows actions, that empowers actions to be freestanding, something that is rooted in goodness, in kusala, in wholesomeness. Okay. And then, of course, the Noble Eightfold Path is described as the Buddha in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta as the Majjhima Patipada. Majjhima is middle, Patipada is path, so it's the middle way, the middle path. What does it mean? So basically, the Noble Eightfold Path is the middle way, is the Majjhima Patipada, because it helps us not get caught in the extremes. Can anyone tell me what the extremes are in the context of the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta?
I would say harmful and less harmful. So it has to do with
Okay.
harmful behavior, I guess.
Yeah, that's that's a general kind of way of looking at it. Did you want to say anything?
Venerable?
Sure.
Sorry.
Yes.
No, sorry. Someone with you wanted to say something.
Well, why don't you go first and then Curtis?
I guess in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, he talked about being caught with extremes of existence and non-existence, basically trying to crave for one extreme of austerity and the other extreme of actually indulgence.
Yes. So both you and Marjorie have come really close. You're quite warm, not quite there. Curtis? Excellent. Yes. So indulgence in, what did you say? Indulgence in sensual pleasures and then asceticism. But actually, what the terms that the Buddha uses is kame sukama sukali kanu yoga, which is being absolutely enthralled with anything that is born of the senses. Okay, so kama is desire. Kame sukama is having a desire for desire. Sukha, the pleasure that we get, not from just eating a piece of cake, but the pleasure we get when we habitually crave to eat a piece of cake. And then we don't stop there. We make it a yoga. Kame sukama sukha anuyoga. It becomes a practice. It becomes a habit. It becomes so ingrained in us, right? So that's on one end. So please notice the emphasis. It's not just about wanting to eat a piece of cake or wanting to have a cup of coffee. It's not that. It's the addiction that we have to craving itself for that pleasure. So there's kamesu kama sukha anuyoga. It is the habit, the practice, the immediate kind of response that we have when it comes to craving for sensuality. So there's a deep emphasis here. So that's on one end. The other end is Attha Kilamatana Yoga. So Atta is self. Kila is actually the opposite of Mudu. So Mudita comes from Mudu, which is soft, and Kila is to make hard. So you're actually hardening your heart. And we make a practice out of it. Atta Kilamatanu Yoga. That becomes a yoga. That becomes a habit. That becomes something I'm totally dedicated to, committed to. So whenever I make a mistake, my heart becomes hard, becomes heavy. Right? And that's usually translated as sense desire and self-mortification. And yes, in the past, the Buddha did. And you even today, you go to India, you can see a lot of these sadhus who have these self-mortifying practices, and they stand with their hand raised for 10 years and 15 years. God knows, and they stand on one leg for 20 years. I don't know how they do it, but they do. I don't see the point of it myself, but they do. They do it. So all that the Buddha termed as Atta Kilamatanu Yoga. Kame Sukama Sukhali Kanu Yoga is this indulgence in all of these sense pleasures when it relates to anything like sense of touch, sense of sight, smell, taste, sound, etc., etc. But there is a layered meaning to it. The layered meaning is the craving that we have for that addiction to pleasure itself, and this hardening of the heart that happens whenever we are judgmental to the self. So that's the layered meaning. So Majjhima Patipada tells us not to get caught in either of these extremes. These are principles for practice. So these are not it's not a dogmatic list that we memorize and then we forget about. No, no, no. This is something we apply. First of all, we have to understand. Once we have understood at an intellectual level, then we really kind of reflect on it, and then we internalize it. And then we apply it we apply it in day-to-day activities. We apply it in day-to-day function, right? So especially when it comes to Samma Vacha, right speech, Samma Kammanta, right action, Samma Ajiva, right livelihood, these have to be accompanied by that sense of mindfulness. So Sila always has to be accompanied by Sati. That sense of mindfulness, that sense of holding in mind, this is wholesome, this is unwholesome. If I do this, I get a good result. If I don't do this, I get a bad result. If I do the opposite, I get a bad result. If I refrain from doing it, I get a bad result. So that mindfulness has to accompany. So that's why it's a very lived thing. You know, it's not something that we see when we read the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta or when we go to a retreat and then we forget about it. No, no, no. It's got to be, it is something that we have to make a lived reality. That's why the Buddha always uses this phrase, Sachi Karana. Sachi is truth, Karana is to make. I have to make it my own truth. Right? And that is understanding it, reflecting on it, actualizing it, applying it, and finally benefiting from the fruit of these actions. Why? So, okay, fair enough. Bhante, you said that you got to do this Majjhima Patipada. This is the Noble Eightfold Path. And if we follow it, it leads us to the wholesome. If we don't follow it, it leads us to unwholesome. Or the Vipaka, the result of these actions are either kusala or akusala, wholesome or unwholesome. Then the Buddha says, yes, because it is Chakkukarani, Jnanakarani, Upasamaya, Abhinyaya, Sambodhaya, Nibbanaya, Samvattati. Chakkukarani gives rise to vision. It sets the direction of our lives. It sets the direction, it sets the course. It is our moral compass, right? The Noble Eightfold Path becomes our moral compass. Jnana Karan, once it becomes our moral compass, we start walking along with it, we start following the direction that the compass points to. There are moments of insight, there are moments of deep understanding, and there are moments of release, right? So this insight gives rise to upasama, a sense of peace. So you're sitting somewhere, there are mosquitoes swarming around. Usually you have a habit of reacting really violently. Get out. You yell and you beat them or you kill them or try and do something. But now you're a little more restrained. No. First precept is the precept of not killing. Okay. So then you restrain yourself, right? Because you understand that harming a living being is not going to be very good. Now, I've chosen a particularly poor example because mosquitoes are very, very difficult. Or I'll give you a personal example. I got Lyme disease, right? And so I am petrified of ticks. But then when I do come across a tick, so I've had ticks on me even after I've been diagnosed, right? And I've seen ticks crawling on me before they've bitten. I see ticks all the time. I still take care not to kill a tick, right? And that's just become an ingrained thing. So to begin with, in the earlier levels, you have to be very conscious. You got to be very careful. You've got to be very watchful. You've got to be very mindful. But then as you keep doing it over time, it just starts manifesting automatically. It starts taking on a life of its own. And then very quickly, you are incapable of harming something. And that's how Sila manifests. That's how Sila works. If we take the trouble of being mindful with it to begin with, reflecting on it, giving it value, cherishing it, bringing it to the heart, making it my own lived reality, then it starts working on its own. Then after that, it's automatic, right? So that's why you find when all of these great ajahns, even Lumpur, like the way he deals with mosquitoes or the way they deal with bugs or when they're out in the forest with wild animals and things like that, there's so much grace, there's so much compassion, there's so much kindness, right? And this is not something that comes out of a forced effort. It seems to just rise well up automatically. It's very inspiring to watch. So upasamaya, this jnana, this idea of insight gives rise to release. And this release then gives rise to abhinya. You start knowing it really well, right? Start knowing it intimately, start knowing it deeply, start knowing it in a very organic level. You even forget that you know, but it works, it manifests. Abhinyaya. Sambodhaya leads to awakening. You awaken to the fact that, this is how I should behave. This is like we spoke about in the first session, achara and gochara. This is how my conduct is defined, and this is the area in which I will conduct myself, achara gochara. And that leads to sambodhaya, that leads to an awakening. I am awake to what's going on. And finally, nibbana leads to release, samvattati. It is conducive to release. So following of the Noble Eightfold Path, the Buddha describes it in this way. This is how it has worked for the Buddha. Chakkukarani, Jnanakarani, Upasamaya, Abhinyaya, Sambodhaya, Nibbanaya, Samvattati. That's how it is stated in the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. So, certain general ways of approaching the middle way so as we can understand it a little better. and we can actually apply it. So the first principle or first characteristic is one of non-oppression. Okay. So whether it's sila or samadhi or panya, the motivating factor is a factor of non-oppression of all sentient beings, including myself. That's the commitment we are making when we get onto the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a non-oppression, non-harm of all sentient beings, including myself. It should not be fed by grasping. So if I get onto the middle path and I'm practicing the Majjhima Patipada with the desire that I have to be the best, I'm still working out of desire. It may still be a noble desire, but it's nevertheless desire. So we have to be very wary of that, because this desire can then cause stress, can then cause harm, take us very easily to the Atthakila Matana Yoga, hardening of the heart. Right? So non-grasping of the goal, non-resistance to all phenomena. And in this respect, it's not very different from the Brahma Viharas. We'll see as we. So we are open, we are available, open to everything that arises, and we respond to it in a manner that is conducive to the teachings of the Noble Eightfold Path. And of course, primarily a non-capitulation to the extremes, as we've discussed. Okay? Non-oppression, non-grasping, non-resistance, non-capitulation. This not just applies to the middle way, it applies to everything. Applies to life, applies to all of the Buddha's teachings. But if we kind of approach it in this manner, then the middle way becomes enjoyable, personalized, meaningful, easy, simple. So now we come to Sila. Sila, virtuous living. And like I said, Sila always has to be accompanied by Sati. Because if we blindly follow Sila, then it becomes Sila Bhatta Paramasa, which is superstition. Right? So when we are following Sila, when we are functioning with the precepts, it always has to be accompanied by mindfulness. So Sila, which is divided into three, right Samma Vacha, right speech, Samma Kammanta, right bodily action, Samma Ajiva, right livelihood. These are the kind of guiding principles. Then the Buddha has given us a set of precepts that we follow in order to make this a lived experience. Okay. So one thing is, you hear all the time, love thy neighbor as you love thy own self. But then, yeah, okay, how do I do that? How do I do that? I don't know how to do that. In this case, the Buddha says, it's Sila. In order to practice Sila, in order to make Sila a lived experience, you either follow the 5 precepts or the 8 precepts or the 10 precepts. For the monks, we have 227. For the nuns, they have 311. These are the precepts. So what is a precept? Again, actually, before we think, okay. Yeah, okay. So I'm not going to go into each of the precepts, and I'm not kind of dwelling on this, but please, I have put all of that in the reading material. Please read the 5 precepts, read the 8 precepts. But there are a few things I'd like to particularly refer to. So the Pali wording of the precepts, Panatipata Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. So whenever you look at the precepts, these 3 words are repeated all the time. Veramani Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. And these are very, very important, because this understanding these 3 words allows us to personalize it. So first of all, Veramani. Vera is creating a distance. Veramani is I am going to move away from something. So Panatipata, Veramani, Sikkhapadam Samadhiyami. I refrain from taking the life of any living being. Okay, so I'm actually creating the distance. Veramani. Sikkhapadam. Sikkha is teaching, pada is step. So I'm taking steps in understanding, implementing, applying this teaching. This is very important because it's not a question of you get a merit if you do it right, you get a demerit if you do it wrong. It's not sin. So if you break a precept, it's not sinful. It removes all of this, right? And it's a very organic, it's a very gentle, it's a very kind way of approaching these precepts, right? Because generally we have lived life in a way that goes against the precepts. Now we are trying to live life which goes against the grain of our habit, which goes against the grain of desire. And hence what we do is that we say that this is a Sikkhapada. I can fail in this. If I fail in this, it doesn't mean I'm going to go to hell. It doesn't mean I'm a sinful person. All that it means is that I pick myself up and I do better next time. Okay. Veramani, Sikkhapada, Samadhiyami. I actually surrender to this. I make this my own. I become one with it. I become even with it. I join with it. Sama is to make equal. Samadhi is to actually make something, in this context, is to make something, is to be equal, come to the same level as. Another way of looking at it is that I voluntarily take this on. I want to do this. Okay, so these are three aspects that I wanted to touch upon when it comes to the phrasing of the precepts. And it's important to get a handle on this because then we can actually see, okay, now how do I create this Veramani? How do I create this distance? How do I put into action this Sikkhapada? And what do I have to do to want to do this? For the Samadhiyami to happen, what is the mindset? Where should the heart be? Right? So it's a very, like, it's not, I keep repeating this all the time, but it's very, very lived. It's alive, it has to be alive. It's not just a set of guiding principles that are there on a piece of paper. And because of all these things, they are virtuous, wholesome, safe, truthful. It's a foundation for samadhi, good action, good sila, good speech, good bodily action, forms the basis, the foundation for clarity, peace, wisdom, insight, meritorious states of being. And it's actually a very blameless and remorseless abiding. There's no remorse. If I follow the precepts and if I do it well, and first of all, there's a sense of, there's a sense of relief. There's a palpable sense of relief. And it's a very blameless life. Why is it blameless? Because it's not harmful to self or others. It does not cause further suffering. And it's not something that's ignored by the wise. Anyone who has a little bit of wisdom will always ensure that they live their lives according to these Sikkhapadas, whether it's 5 or 8 or 10 or whatever the number is. So then, where does Sila come from? We said that Sila is accompanied by mindfulness, but the roots of Sila are actually non-grasping, so araga, non-sensuality, alobha, non-greed, amoha, non-delusion. So you see that sila springs from this very clear, very pristine, almost a precious is the wrong word, but a kind of a pure intention. When we actually make sila a part of our lives, we get freedom from fear, abhaya, avera. We don't alienate anyone else. We don't alienate ourselves. There's a feeling of inclusion because it is rooted in compassion. There's freedom from oppression, not just to mosquitoes and other sentient beings, but to my own self, right? Because I must learn how to be kind to myself. And the Buddha, in many, many suttas, has said that sila is actually the precepts, keeping the precepts is the mahadana. It's dana, mahadana. It is a dana of the highest order because you're giving everyone around you, human beings, animals, sentient beings, you're giving them the gift of security. You're giving them the gift of safety. You're giving them the gift of compassion. And what can be better gifts? These are practices that are long-standing, that are uncorrupted, and these are not looked down upon. So again, there are many suttas where the Buddha actually praises sila. And so generally it is prescribed that lay people follow the 5 precepts. On the lunar observance days in Buddhist countries, people go to the monastery, they spend the whole day and the whole night in the forest monastery, and they keep the 8 precepts. And the Buddha actually says that following the 8 precepts is actually mimicking the lifestyle of an arahant. So it's something very, very special. The Buddha doesn't stop there. He says, there are the 8 precepts. I'm not going to go into it. Please read on your own time. He says, these are 8 precepts that are very, very good. But I will add a 9th one to it. And that is abiding in metta. Okay, and we'll talk more about it when we talk about the Brahma Viharas. So he says there are actually 9 precepts. There are these 8 precepts, plus there is the promise of always functioning from a heart of metta, from a heart of friendship, from a heart of goodwill, from a heart of love. Okay, so I find that so, so beautiful. Okay, so then how do we approach sila? How do we bring it into our daily lives? How do we see it manifesting in our daily lives? Well, it's the same. First is a healthy respect for self. And it manifests or expresses as a respect for others. So unless I love myself, I really can't love anyone else. And I'm not saying we should always be egotistical, self-centered beings, but I'm saying a healthy self-respect, healthy self-love, these are all very, very wholesome qualities. Respect for self, respect for others, welfare of the self, and welfare of all beings is the kernel, is at the core, is the essence of silas, the essence of all the precepts. Always look at intention and motivation. So we've got to keep checking because very, very quickly what happens is people who are very good in sila and they don't know how to approach it or grasp it, they very quickly adopt this attitude of holier than thou. Oh, I'm really good with my sila. You're not all that great. You've got a long way to go. And they can become judgmental, they can become sharp, they can become critical, not realizing that this sharpness, criticality, all of this is first harming them. Only later does it go out. Right? So always look at the intention. Lumpu Cha had a beautiful, beautiful way of teaching and training the monks. When he used to train monks in the Vinaya, in our monastic discipline, he'd say, look at your own behavior 99% of the time. Look at the behavior of others 1% of the time. So an amazing, amazing way of ensuring that we don't become this holier than thou, goody two shoes, pain in the neck kind of person who's always the policeman in the group. Must always be combined with goodwill and compassion. And sorry, what's the, how do I get rid of this? What's, yeah, how do I? Okay, leads to simplicity and contentment. So this is another way of evaluating whether Sila is actually working or not. Is that if it leads to simplicity and contentment, you know you're on the right path. Sorry, just give me 1 minute. I'm trying to move this taskbar. Anyway, I wanted to make it vertical. I don't know how to do that. Okay, it's fine for now. So, yeah, so let's say you're living your life, you're working with these precepts. How do we know that we are A, holding it properly, B, we are practicing it properly? How do we know that these results are good? Well, it must lead to a simpler life, and it must lead to an increase in contentment. So simplicity and contentment would be the litmus tests. Okay, so now we come to Samadhi. Before we come to Samadhi, are there any questions? Okay, so if there are, please, yes, Oshi. Sorry, yes, Faye. Did you have a question?
I was just going to quickly ask. I think one of the things for me around Sila that I find challenging is I'm a very sensual person. I love comfort. I love really nice food. I love nice things. And so I think for me, what I find as I try to apply Sila in daily life, I struggle with that attachment to sort of the immediate pleasure of the senses. And I struggle with having a balanced and middle path relationship with things that are very sensually pleasing. I have like 10 pillows on my bed.
Well, I think you've made a good start. You've identified an area which presents an opportunity for work. The worst thing you can do is feel guilty about it. The worst thing you can do is to force yourself to do the opposite in the name of renunciation, in the name of proper practice. You've got to approach it in a very wise and gentle way. What are some of the things that you can give up slowly? And how can you build up on that? So my recommendation is, first of all, don't judge yourself for loving good food or for loving comfort, right? Because that is a mistake we all make, including myself. I feel extremely guilty whenever I'm really comfortable, or whenever I'm enjoying something that I really enjoy, I feel guilty. And then I look back and I say, wow, where's this guilt coming from? This is actually not wise. This is not, it actually takes me to the opposite of what I'm supposed to be here and be here for, be here to do. So please be wary of that. So don't give in to that guilt. Don't allow that guilt to carry you to a place of judgment or to a place of hardening of the heart. But you can take measures which are planned in order to bring in a little bit of simplicity into your life. And the first approach, the first step on this is actually identifying the problem. And you've done that. So sadhu to you, well done. Right? And then you can see. Now, again, you don't have to overthink this. By having 10 pillows on the bed, you're not breaking the 5 precepts. You know, you can probably, I mean, if you're on 8 precepts, yeah, it can be a little problematic because you don't sleep on a high or luxurious sleeping place. So be practical. Idealism is a big enemy in this spiritual journey because there's ideals are ideals. It's not life. They're ideals for a reason, right? So be practical, bring in a commitment to the 5 precepts, and sure, why not enjoy a nice meal? What's wrong with that? Right? It's wholesome. You're not, unless unless someone is stealing food out of the mouth of a starving person, there's no problem. Right? But yeah, kind of figure out ways and means of simplifying it. Pay attention. First of all, pay attention to this. Reflect on whether this desire for comfort, desire for good food, desire for all of these things, being what you call a very sensual person, how problematic is that? Reflect on that. Don't adopt the standards that are idealistic. Don't adopt standards that someone else lives by. You look at your own life, you look at your own kind of where you are at this moment, and you have to create a vinaya for yourself. You have to create a discipline for yourself, which is within the 5 precepts. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. I'm always humbled by your answers, Venerable. You're very generous with us, and I think we're all very grateful.
Oh, no. I'm just being totally truthful. I'm being
good.
totally truthful. Yeah, because the guilt when it comes to enjoying something, it shouldn't be there. That's the problem. That's the problem. Problem is not with enjoyment. So we're going to see.
So can I ask something?
Yes, Vanessa. Curtis was just saying something, so let him speak, and then I'll pass it on.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see that.
Kame sukama sukala.
Indulgence.
Yeah.
And I haven't fully appreciated the yoga part of that term practice. So
Yeah.
is there some kind of discernment that if you're turning seeking pleasure into a life philosophy,
Yes.
kind of look seriously at that versus it being incidental to your other life priorities?
Absolutely. So Curtis makes a very good point. And he says, my definition of kame sukama sukalikana yoga, he says, if your lifestyle is completely hedonistic, and if everything that you do is in the pursuit of pleasure, you got to look at it. There's something wrong. One of my dear Dhamma brothers, Tansiri Medo, would say, there's nothing wrong in enjoying an Oreo cookie, but if you eat the full box, there's a problem. Right? So, okay. Yes, Vanessa, you had something to say. Thank you, Curtis. Very good point. Yes, Vanessa.
Well, along those lines, I guess I was thinking back to when you were talking about like having one cup of coffee every now and again or every day is okay. But when you have to have that cup of coffee, then it becomes detrimental. It becomes a habit. So there's a fine line that really only each of us as lay people can figure out for ourselves, really, because what could be okay for Faye might not be okay for me, and vice versa,
Exactly.
you know?
That's why I
Yeah.
said, do not adopt the values of another person. And you have
No.
to make allowance for changing circumstances. Today, you may be okay with one cup of coffee. Tomorrow, you may need two, right? And if
Well,
that's
if
not
I
an
needed it, if I
exactly,
need it, then surely
exactly.
that's when I shouldn't have it. If
No,
I
no,
need
no,
it.
no. If you want it, that's the time to exercise restraint.
Oh, okay, if I need it. Yeah. Mhm. I think
The difference
yeah.
between need and
Thank
want.
you.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so now we come to samadhi. And again, this samadhi are factors of the heart and the mind, factors of collectedness, mental cultivation, opening of the heart. So, samma vayama, samma sati, samma samadhi. So, please refer to the teaching on the Noble Eightfold Path that lists all of the factors for sila, samadhi, and panya. But very quickly, endeavor. What is this endeavor? This endeavor or effort, samma vayama, right effort, right endeavor. It basically boils down to four actions that the Buddha calls the Mahapadanas. Padana is establishment, so I establish myself in it. Padana in Pali, Pradana in Sanskrit. It also means something that is of the highest importance. So Pradana means it is foremost, it is the most important. And the Mahapadanas, so the most important, the greatest establishment. And there are four. He says you've got to recognize good, wholesome states that have arisen in the mind. And, this is an ongoing thing. This doesn't, you've got to keep doing this from time to time. Every time you meditate, it's a good way to start. Identify any good, wholesome qualities that have arisen in the mind. Whatever wholesome qualities that have arisen, we protect them. Analyze, look at the mind, look at the heart, see if there's anything unwholesome. Whatever is unwholesome, we let go of them. Right? In very simple terms, stick to the wholesome, let go of the unwholesome. Proper endeavor. And what this then does is, if it's a concerted, repeated effort while we meditate, it settles the heart, settles the mind. And then when we are off of the cushion, it kind of takes on a life of its own. Then there's mindfulness. We have to, when we are cultivating the heart, we have to be very mindful about all these factors that arise. And with this combination of right endeavor and mindfulness, there is a collectedness that happens. So we sit down, we are meditating. There's a thought that comes up, I hate Sue from work. Sue is terrible. Sue is always insulting me. Oh, no, don't go there. Don't go there. I identify something unwholesome that's arising and I'm pulling back. I'm letting go. I'm not going to engage with it. Allow it to be. It's okay. You're fine over there. I'm just not going to pay attention. Or may all beings be well and happy. So, wow, that's a very good thought. I'm going to cherish it. I'm going to protect it. That's what I'm going to engage with. So, there's an effort element there. There's an element of holding something in mind. And the result of that is you become really calm. even if it is for a few minutes or even if it was for the full period of meditation, it works really well and you're happy. What it does promote is engaging with a deepened sense of awareness, clarity, and energy. So whenever we are working with factors of samadhi, which are these four right efforts with sati, mindfulness, and with a sense of collectedness and joy and happiness, it has a calming effect. It's very peaceful and it gives rise to a deep, deep contentment. There's a unification. Mind is not scattered, doesn't keep jumping about. So even if we start the meditation session like that, very soon the mind will settle. Again, you've got to be careful. If your day has been busy, if there has been a lot of activity, a lot of mental activity, a lot of hard things to deal with, that's how the mind is going to be. So you've got to give allowance for that. Okay. And samadhi, collectedness, wholesome cultivation acts as a foundation for wisdom, supported by sila, supported by virtue. Okay. So just as we said, sila has to be accompanied by sati, mindfulness all the time. Samadhi has to be accompanied by a sense of joy, a sense of happiness. Lumpo Pasanno said something to me very early on, and I've really cherished this. He would always say, you know, when people say that I'll meditate, I'll get samadhi, and I'll be happy, that's a gross mistake. You've got to be happy to begin with to get samadhi. So we are not in a happy place. Samadhi is elusive. It will not arise. It will not be present. So please kind of keep that in mind, toy around with it a little bit. So just like we looked at sila, let's look at samadhi. Vivicheva kamihi. The root is vivicheva. We seclude ourselves or we discriminate from during this period of mental cultivation, during this period of meditation. I'm not going to indulge in thoughts that are of a sensual nature. So I insulate my mind from that. Again, that is that idea of padana, letting go of things that are unwholesome. Vivicheva akusalehi dhammihi. Any phenomena that arises in the mind or in the heart that is of an unwholesome root, which is a root of greed, hatred, or delusion, I let go of. Okay? So these are the roots of samadhi. And then what happens? We sit down and we meditate, and I'm actually trying to figure out, I'm paying attention to the mood of the mind, and I'm actually noting the mood of the mind. So there is some kind of discursive thought. And whenever I find things that are unhelpful, I seclude myself from them. The result of that is ease and comfort. Right? In Pali, piti sukha. So I keep carrying on with my, again, this is a format that is given in the Noble Eightfold Path. It need not work the same way every time you sit and meditate. Please do not try and replicate it. This is just like a broad guideline. Right? So I look at the mood of the mind, I seclude the mind from, or I insulate the mind from anything that's unwholesome. I stick with that. And after a while, thought patterns become less, becomes calm, gentle, still. There's a deep feeling of wellness that arises. And then there's a gladness, sampasadana, born of collectedness, ekodi bhava. So this is when we find that the heart and the mind actually start collecting. There's silence, there's stillness, it's not scattered. So again, as we stick around with this, we stick with this. So I don't know, maybe 25, 30, 35 minutes have passed. Again, this is all just numbers, right? It's not. So the sense of comfort and ease gives rise to a sense of equanimity. So initially, when this comfort comes up, the general idea is, this is great. Wow, this is great. Then you're just observing that. You're just with that. And very soon, that this is great, that oomph, that power behind it, gives way to something that is very steady, very placid. That is upekkha, equanimity. And this is when there's a lot of attention and awareness is at its peak. And finally, because of the equanimity, we go beyond feelings of pleasure and pain. So even if a sensation arises that's extremely pleasurable, or if a sensation arises that's extremely painful, we're not really bothered by it. We keep our balance. We hold the middle ground. And then this is when awareness and equanimity are actually purified. Okay? So this is the kind of format that's set up in the suttas, especially when it comes to samadhi. So again, just like we looked at sila, what is it in daily life? How does it manifest? How do we encourage it to manifest? Well, first by adopting attitudes of non-grasping and at the same time non-aversion. Very similar to not getting caught up with the extremes, right? Encourage calm, peace, and stability. So before you sit down to meditate, maybe it will be helpful to turn off all your devices 20 minutes before you start meditating. Turn all your devices off. Maybe walk up and down for 10 minutes to get rid of any bodily energy that may have been, like, especially if you feel kind of, oh, there's a lot of energy here, then you walk a little bit, get rid of that. Or if you feel very agitated, sit down and listen to some calming music, whatever it is, then start meditating. So make sure you set yourself up for a good meditation. Lumpo Sumedho would always say, going to the morning meditation requires a lot of preparation, right? And we do. We have a shower, we make sure our robes are fine, we make sure we are comfortable, we're not too cold, we're not too warm. Same thing for the heart and the mind. Before you start meditating, maybe it's good to have a cup of tea if you feel really tired and you need a little bit, or a glass of juice if you're really kind of hungry. You're sitting there and meditating and your stomach's going off. You know, you can't meditate, can't do that. So make sure that you help yourself to set up a successful meditation. It's not an exercise in attainment. Please do not view that, okay, I'm going to sit down and meditate and I'm going to get first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, or I'm going to go into some deep state of samadhi. It is not an exercise in attainment. Samadhi is a deep sense of release. It's a sense of freedom. It's a sense of joy. It's a sense of happiness. This does not come with an attainment mindset. Just as we looked at the litmus test for sila and said that simplicity and contentment are the litmus tests, when samadhi is strengthening, right, as our meditation keeps progressing, then what happens is that you automatically notice that the proliferation, in Pali, the term is papancha, this kind of constant chattering of the mind starts calming down. When you're meditating and even otherwise. There's a sense of lucidity, clarity, and sustained awareness, right? These two are the litmus tests for samadhi. And finally, leads to insight that's born of collectedness. Right? The wisdom that arises out of having a mind that's not scattered, or having a heart that's not scattered. So now it's 8 o'clock. So what we'll do is I'll request Faye to put you into your groups. So please discuss any one precept that may be challenging to implement in daily life. How can that challenge be overcome? So actually come up with a kind of a plan. So if you discussed it within your groups, and then one of you would come and report back after the break. So you do that, take a 5-minute break. We'll meet at 10 minutes past 8, and we'll discuss this. Thank you. Okay.
Would you like folks to come back now, Bante? Yes?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I hope they took a break, but
I think so, Venerable. You're doing great
great.
tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay, wonderful. So yeah, we can close the rooms.
Okay. They'll be back in 60 seconds. Is there anything you need?
No, not at all.
Good.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So, Faye, if you can, if one person from each group can share, that would be great.
I can share from our group.
Sure, Mark. Thank you.
So any of them can jump in, but essentially we discussed a few of the precepts. So one that came up was the taking of other lives and just being thoughtless in kind of that way, not really thinking about other lives. And one comment that came up was, some living things can annoy you, like the mosquito example, the mosquitoes that you gave earlier as an example, but they're just trying to survive, just like you were trying to survive.
Exactly.
And so you want to just let them live and let live, to use the cliche. So just think of them like you would think of yourself. We also discussed the precept of intoxicants. And so,
so before you move on to that, sorry
apologies.
to cut in.
No.
No, my apologies. I cut in. So before you move on to the next one, so there are two things I'd like to say. So an excellent point that has come up, looking at intention, right? Live and let live. Ajahn Jayasaru has a wonderful way of phrasing this. He says, sometimes sila is not entirely logical. Like, it doesn't make logical sense for you to be compassionate to a mosquito that's carrying malaria. It's not logical for you to be compassionate to a tick that's carrying Lyme disease or anaphylaxis. But it's beyond that. It's not logical. It doesn't make absolute logical sense. It's a sense of compassion. It's the open heart. It's a sense of live and let live. And I'd like to share another story that Lumpur Viradhammo always keeps, not always, but he's mentioned this really interesting story a few times. So when he was a monk in Thailand, he went to visit Ajahn Buddhadasa. Ajahn Buddhadasa was a contemporary of Lumpucha and a very, very well-respected, renowned meditation master. Ajahn Buddhadasa would have pet chickens. So he was sitting and Lumpur V was sitting next to him and they were talking Dhamma. And all of a sudden there was a mosquito that came and landed on Ajahn Buddhadasa's right shoulder, the exposed shoulder, and it started sucking blood. So Lumpur V looked at that and said, oh, this is interesting. Let's see what he does, how he reacts to this. So then what he did was he picked up his pet chicken, took it to his shoulder, and the chicken ate the mosquito. And Ajahn Buddhadasa looked very quizzically, kind of the mischievous expression at Lumpur, and said, kind of didn't say it, but the expression was like, "What do you think of that, huh?" And then he put the chicken down. His Holiness the Dalai Lama keeps saying the same thing. He says, mosquitoes, difficult. So he says sometimes when he's kind and compassionate and the mood of his mind is open and expansive, yeah, the mosquitoes can come, it'll sit, then it drinks a little bit of blood and flies away. Then at other times when the mood of his mind is not as expansive, he shoos them off. He doesn't let them. So very, very good stories there, and that are very instructive, right? So carry on.
Thank you. Another precept that came up in discussion was intoxicants. So we mentioned a few of them. Everyone had a different idea. So one of them was the idea of intoxicants. So a comment that came up was about maybe unconsciously consuming intoxicants. So maybe you mindlessly just enjoy chocolate, or you have coffee or other things that you don't consume with the goal of it intoxicating you necessarily, but would that be, that one could be difficult to adhere to. And we talked about intoxicants in terms of entertainment and how you feel like maybe you're doing something to learn or to better yourself, but in fact, it becomes like an intoxicant because of the way it affects your mind. So those examples came up for that precept. And then another one that came up. Oh, apologies.
I'm going to cut in there.
Please do.
So first thing is, so at a very practical sense, tea, coffee, chocolate, even tobacco, these are all classed as stimulants, not as intoxicants. So there's a distinction there, right? Second thing that I'd like to say, samma kammanta, right bodily action. This covers not killing, not stealing, avoiding all kinds of sexual misconduct. It does not include taking intoxicants. Now, that doesn't mean that there's absolute license to be intoxicated. No, refraining from intoxicants is actually a sati factor. It's a factor of mindfulness, right? So when you take the 5 precepts, there's lying, there's refraining from lying, refraining from stealing, refraining from killing, refraining from stealing, refraining from false and harmful speech, refraining from any sexual misconduct, and then number 5 is intoxicants. So the first one, number 1, not taking life, not stealing, and avoiding sexual misconduct, all these are samma kammanta, that is right bodily action. Obviously, avoiding false and harmful speech is a category of its own, samma vacha, right speech. But then intoxicants is a sati factor, samma sati. Because consuming intoxicants, what it does is it hampers mindfulness. It hampers the ability of the mind to be clear in the present moment. And therefore, it is the doorway by which all the other 4 precepts get challenged. So I think that's an important aspect to keep in mind when we are relating to this idea of intoxication, is that it is a more, it has a deeper implication in the sense that, so killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, these are all direct actions. Consuming intoxicant is an indirect detriment. Direct actions that have direct detrimental results. Consuming intoxicants is an indirect, has an indirect detrimental quality because it has the ability to cloud the mind and hence endanger all the other 4 precepts. And then, of course, the role of intention is very important. So without knowing, if you take an intoxicant. I mean, there's a story in the Vinaya, right? Like there was a monk who went on alms round and people put liquor in his alms bowl. He didn't know it was liquor, he consumed it. So the Buddha says, well, he did it without knowing. Yeah? Okay, so please carry on.
Thank you for that. Another one that came up was the lying as well for a precept, and how it could be challenging because sometimes you tell not big lies but small lies, little white lies, or you obscure the truth, and especially if you're in a program or in an environment where there's pressure on you, and you may be able to get an advantage through those little white lies, or you may advantage yourself in some ways. So you're thinking of yourself that way, and I think that was another one that came up. So not telling big lies, but lying in the sense of things things that would help you, I suppose.
Exactly. And just to address that, so this intention, so again, this is a mixed thing. I mean, it's a double thing. So first of all, there's the result of engaging in something that's not the truth. Second thing is the possible advantage that one derives out of engaging in what is untrue. So it has two levels. So we have to be cognizant of that. And then right speech is actually a little bit more complex. So right speech is actually four things. Musavada Veramani, refraining from anything that is untrue. Pisunaya Vachaya Veramani, refraining from speech that is kind of poking, sharp speech. Parusaya Vachaya Veramani, engaging in speech that is abrasive, right? So rude, hurtful, kind of coarse. And finally, Sampapalapa Veramani. So pala is fruit. Sampapalapa is something that is not fruitful. So engaging in kind of idle chatter. So this right speech is actually a complex issue that needs a little bit of mindfulness around it. Okay. So please go ahead, Mark.
Thank you. No, that was most of the discussion. There was a bit of discussion about meditation as well, but those were the precepts we discussed.
Awesome.
So thank you for that. That was a good, very, very nice response. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. Okay, who's next?
Vanessa?
I don't mind going next.
Oh, lovely. Yes. Please go ahead, Vanessa.
Sorry, do you want me to go or Faye?
Sure.
I mean, a lot of what we talked about was exactly what we've already talked about just now, so I won't sort of repeat all that. But one of the things that came up was around the intoxication. We sort of thought about a lot about that in terms of how at the beginning of our practice, we took these precepts very literally for what they actually said. So intoxication was about alcohol and drugs, basically. And now, but in our discussion, we talked about how that can sort of expand when you become when you start thinking about things a little deeper, because craving is very intoxicating. Power is very intoxicating. Beauty and youth were mentioned. I mean, all those things become very insidiously, go into it. The same sort of thing goes along with lying and gossip. White lies, you might give a white lie to protect somebody. Is that, I mean, if somebody, one of the examples was if you go somewhere and have a meal and they've made a special treat for you and they say, would you like it? Do you tell them no? I thought it was disgusting. Isn't it nice to just sort of say something a little untruthful to be kind,
Yes. So just
And
before you
so
move on,
and gossip
sorry,
too.
just,
How
just before
gossip
you
can.
just before you move on, just before you move
Mhm.
on. So 2 points. First thing with the intoxicants, right? So in a sense, yes, all of these things, craving, all of these things can be very intoxicating. But the precept is specific. When we are talking about the precepts, it's Sura, Meraya, Majja, Pamadatana. So anything that is fermented grain, fermented fruit, fermented cereals, all of these things which lead to intoxicating the mind. So, particularly, and then that's been extrapolated to present day things like marijuana and heroin and cocaine. So, anything that has a direct kind of impact on the ability of mindfulness. So, when you're intoxicated by alcohol or intoxicated, now, I've not done any hard drugs, I don't know how, but I would assume, like I've had alcohol, and mindfulness can actually be seriously hampered, right?
Mhm.
But when you are being intoxicated by something else, say craving or beauty, there's still opportunity for mindfulness to manifest. You can be aware that you are intoxicated and you can actually move away. So that is a key point. Second thing, like I said about the white lies, and if someone's giving you a dessert, as you said, then you don't want to be hurtful.
Yeah.
So there, the other factors come into place, right? So just because I want to say the truth, I shouldn't be speaking in ways that compromise or that support parusaya vachaya and prasunaya vacha. So if someone comes and says, um, good morning, oh, I made this painting, how does it look? Now, just because I don't like it, I can't say I don't like it, it looks horrible. Because by doing that, I may be truthful, but I'm actually being hurtful and I'm being abrasive. So in many times, it's like in monastic settings, we just stay silent. But in a social setting, it's difficult to do that. So you've just got to be aware of what you're trying to do. So being rude at the expense of being truthful is still not wise.
Mhm.
So please carry on.
That makes sense. Well, I'm not sure. My group, is there anything else that I've missed out that hasn't been talked about already, either with the first group or with me, what I've said? I mean, we also talked about, the killing of bugs, and then we got into, well, what about, we got into being vegetarian, and what does that mean in terms of and I thought, and correct me if I'm wrong, that it was about, if something is killed for you to eat, then you wouldn't want to eat it. But if you go to a restaurant and they're serving chicken casserole, it's okay to eat it because it's already dead.
Absolutely.
Is that correct?
Absolutely. So that the same rule applies to Theravadan monks and nuns. When we go on alms round, when we are offered non-vegetarian, we have to accept it. It's up to us whether we want to eat it or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? Now,
Yeah.
this idea of vegetarianism in the Mahayana school came up because of a historical context. When monks and nuns went to China, China had no culture of dana. So monks and nuns would go on alms round, no one would give them food. So the monks and nuns told them, this is what happens when we go on alms round, you need to feed us. They said, well, we're not going to feed you, we'll give you land. You grow your own food. So then they decided, okay, if that's the case, then we'll all be vegetarian. Now, when His Holiness moved from Tibet and became a refugee in India. There are now all these huge monastic institutions of Vajrayana Tibetan Buddhism functioning in India. He said, well, in Tibet, we had no other option. We had to be non-vegetarian. But now in India, we have access to cereals, we have access to vegetables, and there's a plethora of vegetarian options. So all our monasteries, the kitchens would be 100% vegetarian. Lumpur Cha did the same thing. Now, northeast of Isan is a very poor part of Thailand. There wasn't much. Now it's a lot better, but earlier it was a very dry, arid place, which was, people were hunter-gatherers. So most of the food that people would get were food that they got from foraging. So then Lumpur Cha tried educating them, teaching them how to grow vegetables, how to grow lentils and things like that. But you can't change the culture of a population overnight.
Yeah.
An interesting thing is that, Swami Vivekananda, who was a very wonderful Advaita sage, he was asked this question about vegetarianism and non-vegetarianism. And he said, well, I pay much more attention to what comes out of my mouth than what I put in. So he said, vegetarianism is helpful, but it's not essential. So these are varying things to consider, anecdotes that can be instructive. Yeah.
Well, thank you. That's interesting historical information, which I didn't know about. So I think that about covers everything we said, unless somebody else in my group wants to add anything.
No, thanks.
Actually, I do have one. Sorry, I was just going to ask one other thing, because we talked about how things like craving, intoxicants lead to craving, and gets insidious, and it becomes sort of more in depth as we get more familiar with our practice. So some of those things would not come under precepts, but they certainly would come under the eight. Can
you give me an example?
Well, I was thinking about the power, say, the craving for power.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that would come under something else. It might not come under the precept, but it would come under something else, like right action, or
Well,
that kind of
it's
thing.
an indirect thing.
See what I mean?
It's not directly related to the precepts. It's indirect, but it's certainly detrimental, for sure.
But yes.
So that's when you lose mindfulness, and you're given to craving, you're given to conceit, you're given to this lust for power.
Yeah.
So it's certainly a mindfulness factor, I would say, but an indirect.
Yes. Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you very
Vanessa.
much. Thank you.
And Marjorie, were you going to say something?
We're from the same group. I think, no, Vanessa, you've covered it all. I was the one I was curious about was the whole idea of white lies.
Yeah.
Because I think we do that from time to time, but I think I do that from an intention that it's less harmful than it would be to be outright blunt.
Yeah, sometimes you've got to pick the better of the two evils.
Yeah.
It's very easy to say, no, you must be absolutely truthful 100% of the time. If we can do that, well and good. That should certainly be the intention, but sometimes circumstances are different. Not that I'm condoning.
Life is not that black and white,
Exactly.
is it really? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So not that I'm condoning anything, but I'm just saying we've got to be realistic, and sometimes we've got to take the path of least harm.
Venerable, may I ask a question?
Yes, Karen, please.
It seems to me like the the three areas of Panya, Sila, and Samadhi, are to nurture this observation that one develops over time, either in waking moments or in meditation, and eventually in wisdom as well. Is that the awareness, the fulcrum you talked about?
Yes. So the Samma, that is the, yes. So intention, sorry, go ahead.
So sorry, I would just want to say that it's being that fulcrum, that full awareness of the extremes that one can possibly go wrong with, this idea that you suspend judgment, but to be able to know where the mind is heading and not be caught in it.
Exactly. So it's functioning out of mindfulness. It's functioning out of compassion and functioning out of insight and wisdom.
I love the way you use the word fulcrum because it just went bam. Thank you so much. Yeah.
You're welcome. You got Ajahn Amaru to thank for that. So.
Thank you, Ajahn.
Okay, so let's move on to the last bit. And we are going to be talking about the Brahma Viharas. So before we go into the Brahma Viharas, one thing that I'd like to say to set the stage is in very simple terms, if you want to create a very succinct definition, something that I found intensely helpful in my practice is to approach the Brahma Viharas as simply having the capacity to create space around resistance. That's it. Right? There's no need to overly complicate it too much. So the way I approach the Brahma Viharas is to create space around resistance. But when we look at the Brahma Viharas, there are some things that are called parikalpa in Sanskrit, parikappa in Pali. And these are things, this is actually how the human mind functions. So the human mind is a mixture of memories, it's a mixture of cultural conditioning, it's a mixture of values, it's a mixture of perceptions, opinions, thoughts, ideas. There's a lot that we carry around. And all of these things function in lightning speed, and sometimes we don't know what the hell is going on. But sometimes it's useful to pay a little bit of attention to certain aspects of how this process of thinking happens. So one thing that our mind does all the time is called Dhamma, or labeling, right? This is a glass, that's a pen, this is an apple, this is a Buddha Rupa, this is my robe, da 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 da. After labeling, we associate a shape and a form to that label. So an apple is round, a robe is made of cloth and it's flat, a bottle has a certain shape, etc., etc. So you have a name, and now to the name we associate a shape. Then we associate qualities, right? So my robe is made of cotton, so it's soft, it's breezy, it's airy, it breathes, it's not constricting, it's comfortable. An apple is generally sweet, it's crisp, it's juicy, da 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 da. Right? So we have a name, we ascribe a shape, then we ascribe qualities, and finally we add what are called sankalpa parikalpas, which are projections of ideas and judgments. So I like my robe, or I don't like my robe. I like an apple, or I don't like an apple. Okay. So generally, this is how the thinking process kind of functions. The Buddha talks about this in various forms. Sometimes he uses these four. Sometimes he says pamana karana, kinchi karana, nimitta karana, things like that. So there are but the idea is the same. So this idea that thinking is actually a combined process. A thought is actually made up of many different things. Right? It's good to keep that in mind. So then what happens is, what is the Brahma Viharas? So very often, and we'll talk about this more in a little more detail, but very often people think that the Brahma Viharas are, or Metta, Mudita, Karuna, Upeka, but let me preface it with another anecdote. So about 35 years ago, Lumpur Viradhammo met His Holiness the Dalai Lama in New Zealand. And they had a few discussions, and Lumpur had a question about metta, to which His Holiness said, metta is just the method. So metta, mudita, karuna, upeka, these are just methods. They are not the goal, right? So the way I would like to look, or another way of presenting this idea of Brahma Viharas, is that I would suggest please read that piece that I've attached in the reading list. It's called Suffusion with the Divine Abidings. And it's a beautiful representation of how these four factors of the Brahma Vihara comes into play. So a little bit about Brahma Vihara. So Brahma Vihara is a complex word. It has two, it's combined, it's a combination of two words, Brahma and Vihara. Vihara is abiding. Brahma is representative of the Brahma God, but the word itself means expansive, something that is expansive, something that is lofty, something that is exalted. And another thing to keep in mind is that Brahma has four faces. So all four faces are there at the same time. So when we talk of the Brahma Viharas, it's not that metta functions independently. It's not that karuna, mudita, upeka function independently. It's just that at one moment, one might be a little more prominent, but the others are always present. Just like how Brahma has four faces, you can face number one, and two might be this way, three here, four there, but all the four faces are together. Just like that, at one point, there may be a very deep feeling of friendship and goodwill, but that doesn't mean that compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity are absent at that moment. They are also present. And so, what is this abiding, this Brahma, or this Vihara, Viharati? So, if we look at the suffusion with the divine abidings or sublime abidings, it says Parittava Viharati. So, we have to abide in a manner that the heart is kind of pervaded, filled. Our whole being is drenched, pervaded with all of these qualities, and we are exuding all of these qualities all around. So instead of, for me, it has always been a little bit easier to plug into this idea of, instead of having a formulaic approach to the Brahma Viharas, actually to see how my heart feels at that moment when I am engaging the Brahma Viharas. And that is, the heart is abundant, exalted, immeasurable, without without hostility and without ill will. That's how our chanting book translates it. But here, Vipulena abundant, Mahaggatena exalted, Apamanena immeasurable, Averena without any sense of alienation, without any sense of discrimination, without any sense of exclusivity, Avyapajena without ill will. So when we are actually engaging with the Brahma Viharas, or when we are abiding in the Brahma Viharas, this is actually the feeling of the chitta. This is the feeling of the heart. So then what do we do? What are some of the methods that we can use in order to reach these states? Well, we can, the Buddha tells us that we can engage in metta, which is goodwill, friendship, loving kindness, karuna, which is compassion, empathy, Mudita, altruistic joy, appreciation, selfless appreciation. Upekha, equanimity. So another way of looking at it is how this I found personally useful, is that metta is a bridge that connects. Right? So if I see a good friend, then there's a feeling of friendship, there's a sense of connection. If I'm looking at someone who's suffering, then the heart goes to a sense of empathy. I walk in their shoes. I try and feel what they feel. There's an opening of the heart. Mudita, if I see a puppy dog, or if I see a little baby, or if I see a flower, or a beautiful sunrise, the heart immediately softens. So there's a softening. So karuna is a movement towards empathy, compassion. Mudita is a softening and opening. Upekha is a balancing. Okay. So this then, and we'll talk about the near and the far enemies, but upekha is what keeps us in the middle. So I can actually love my friend without falling in love with that person. So I can actually have a sense of affection, a sense of goodwill, without the sense of grasping, without the sense of ownership. I can be moved and feel empathy and compassion without being depressed. I can cultivate the feeling of gladness, joy, happiness, altruistic joy, altruistic appreciation, without, again, without kind of being super exuberant or super ebullient about it, like taking it to a totally different level. So starting here, then there are some common misconceptions that I'd just like to address, and then we'll have a chance to kind of talk about it. So very often people say, oh, when I do the Brahma Viharas, each one is separate. Well, no, they're not. They cannot exist independently. It's just at one moment, one of the Brahma Viharas seems a little more prominent. And so should I practice one at a time or one after another? Well, for me, I just go to the heart and feel that the heart is open, actually engage with that feeling of expansion, that feeling of abundant, exalted, immeasurable. However, by either bringing into mind someone I love and someone I care about, or bringing into mind the suffering of a person and actually wishing, may they be free from suffering, or by saying, wow, this person did such a good job. There's so much goodness by this action. May they be well and happy. And all at the same time, with a sense of balance, not being swayed by praise or blame, not being swayed by desire or aversion, things like that. Another misconception is that it's a state, right? Well, it's an abiding. It's not a state. So I must have metta. So there's this co-worker. This co-worker is getting on my nerves, or I have a really noisy neighbor. This neighbor plays music at 12 in the night and is drinking beer all the time and disturbs me and has no idea. And then you say, may you be well and may you be happy. That's not authentic. That's not true. It's not effective. Right? So it's not a state, it's an abiding. So you recognize, yes, this person is causing me all of this discomfort, suffering, anger. But the important thing is that I don't have any ill will to that person. So I may feel like beating that person, but I will never go and beat that person physically. Right? Creating space around that resistance. First of all, identifying the resistance. And secondly, instead of just allowing that resistance to proliferate and become stronger and feeding it, you actually objectify it and create space around it. Looking at things as they are. I have no metta. I can't do metta. Well, don't look at metta as a state or as a practice. Just go to the heart. Think about your mom, or think about your teacher, or think about someone who you really respect and love and value, and see how the heart feels. Right? You don't have to do metta as a state or as a formulaic practice. You can bring up these memories that take your heart to a soft, beautiful, expansive, abundant, happy space, and feel how the heart feels. I can't remember the sequence. So there are many places in the suttas where there are all these sequences. You start with yourself, and then you expand and you bring into mind people who are very friendly towards you, and then you move to people who are indifferent, and then finally you move to your enemy. It becomes very, very formulaic, becomes kind of a practice that's done over and over again. It can become dry, it can become something you can't even remember. And then all of a sudden, whoops, what was I doing? Was I thinking about my friend, or was I thinking about my enemy? Ah, let's start all over again. No. The sequence is not important. What's important is the opening of the heart, right? I can do metta to others, but I can't do metta to myself. This is a very, very common thing that people talk about when it comes to the Brahma Viharas. And the idea is, again, if there is this feeling of me and others, there's already a sense of avera. There's already a sense of alienation, right? So don't focus on that. Focus on the heart. Bring up a memory, an image, an emotion that takes your heart to a place of abundant, exalted abiding, and just be in that abiding. So then we said that, there are these four immeasurables, and in the scriptures, there's a kind of, there are some things called near enemy and far enemy. So near enemy are things that a Brahmavihara can morph into, that is somehow the dark side of it. The far enemy is the actual opposite. So when we take metta, which is actually unconditional friendliness, benevolence, goodwill, the opposite of that is ill will. But very quickly, this unconditional friendliness can morph into conditional love. Right? So there are conditions attached to this relationship. So then that somehow muddies the pond. It brings in a kind of, it makes it, it muddies the pond. Let's leave it there. So metta, karuna, again, empathy, this wish or willingness to bear with something or to remove the suffering of others. So the total opposite is cruelty, a sense of schadenfreude, a sense of cynicism. Oh, yeah, he or she is suffering because they really deserve it. Now that's the total opposite of karuna. But then it can very quickly turn into a sense of pity. It can turn into a sense of condescension. Yeah, I know you're suffering. Yeah. But, that kind of dismissive attitude. Mudita, sympathetic joy, where we actually celebrate the good fortune of others. The far enemy, the total opposite, is jealousy. Oh, he did such a good job. Gosh, and he or she got so much praise. I should have done that. I should have done that. Jealousy. Near enemy is exhilaration. So instead of actually celebrating their success and their joy, we very quickly turn it into a total party full of debauchery and, forgetting what we are celebrating in the first instance. And then, of course, upeka, which is equanimity, or I like to call it a sense of balance, a sense of watching over. It's an unshakable balance of mind, which is rooted in wisdom or insight. It can very quickly turn into paranoia. I have to be equanimous. I have to, oh my God, I'm losing my equanimity. I'm losing my equanimity. No, you've already lost the plot if you've gone there. That's the total opposite, which is far enemy is paranoia. The near enemy is indifference. So it's very easy for people to say, yes, I'm very equanimous to your suffering. Oh, I'm really suffering. My heart is, I'm going through a really difficult time. Yeah, it too will pass. Just bear with it. That kind of dry, there's no empathy, there's no compassion, there's no expression of softness, there's no expression of love. So it's important to keep all these things in mind. So then what are some useful phrases that we can bring into our practice? First of all, non-resistance, non-grasping. We've spoken about that a lot. Open and available. Again, open, non-resistant, available, non-grasping. It's like this and it all belongs. This is a very, very famous saying of Lumpur Sumedho that many people use as a mantra when they meditate. Whenever something comes up, you can say, it's like this. It's horrible, it's like this. It's wonderful, it's like this. There's a sense of equanimity there. It all belongs. There's a sense of welcoming. There's a sense of non-resistance. There's a sense of metta there. So upeka and metta. Now, at this point, I'd like to state that when you look at the four Brahma Viharas, metta, karuna, mudita, and upeka, metta and upeka are actually also classified as paramis, cultivations. So it is something that we are encouraged to contemplate. These are mind states we are encouraged to engage with actively, encouraged to foster, allow it to cherish, allow it to grow, really cherish it, protect it, expand on it. And if we are always functioning from a heart that's imbued with a sense of friendliness, with a sense of connection, and at the same time with a sense of balance, then whenever something that is unpleasant comes in contact with it, the natural arising is an arising of empathy, an arising of compassion, an arising of karuna. And if something very pleasant, beautiful comes in contact, the automatic arising is an arising of mudita, softening, gladdening. And then finally is a mantra that Lumpur Veradamo has started using quite often. And I've found it personally extremely, extremely helpful. And we've kind of helped a lot of people, especially who are facing a lot of trouble with deep, deep emotional issues like the loss of a loved one or trauma because of abuse, PTSD issues, all of these things. So he simply says, I love you, I have always loved you, I will always love you. So anything that arises, so you're sitting and you're meditating, you're abiding in this open heart, and suddenly something difficult comes up. I love you, I have always loved you, I will always love you. And there was a very wonderful practitioner from England who told Lumpur, but this is really profound. So you can take, I love you, I have always loved you, I will always love you, and then remove the subject and the object. So you have love, have always loved, will always love. And then you can remove the tense, the time component. So you have love, love, love. Okay? So it's something very simple. And the word love, people cringe, right? And rightly so, because it's a word that has so many connotations. It's heavy with so many meanings. But instead of going into thought, instead of going into assessing the word and pulling that word apart and engaging with it intellectually, just go to the feeling of the open heart, a heart that is not resistant, that is welcoming, that is soft, that is kind. What else is love? That's what love is. That's what love should be. If it is love, sans ego. If it is love without ego. So these are some of the useful phrases. And of course, you can have a selection of pictures. So here there's one of Ajahn Chah being in a playful mood, and I think he's trying to imitate a laughing Buddha. There's one of him holding a flower. And then, of course, my absolute favorite is His Grace Desmond Tutu, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, teaching or trying to get His Holiness to dance. It is absolutely, those two, they can make anyone laugh. So yeah, so have all of these, or you might have a picture of your mom, your grandmom, your child, your spouse, anything that is something that's of deep value, deep sense of wholesome feeling, right? So again, these pictures will vary from person to person. So then let's do a quick guided meditation. Keeping all of this in mind, I know it's a lot of information, but let's do a 10-minute guided meditation. So again, this meditation is more to just give hints. So as we've done in the past couple of sessions, please adopt a posture that's comfortable and stable. Check in with the body, making sure the body is comfortable and stable. Check in with the heart and the mind, the chitta. Just making note of the mood of the mind. So again, we're not chopping up the Brahma Viharas into Metta, Mudita, Karuna, Upekha. We're just going to abide in a feeling of loving awareness. Open, available, non-grasping. So having set those intentions, it'll be helpful to bring your mind or bring up in your mind the image of someone who you value, respect, love, cherish. Just try and hold that picture in your mind's eye. And just notice what it does to the mood of the mind, what it does to the heart. It's a very silent observation, very gentle observation, a very loving observation. And if the image fades, no problem. Just stay with the feeling. Or if you want to bring up the image again, bring up the image. No right or wrong. It's a very emotive pursuit. It's not an intellectual pursuit. It's a very emotive pursuit. If it helps, you can bring in one of those phrases. It's like this, it all belongs. I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Just pick up the resonance of that. No judgment. If a loved one is suffering or going through a challenge, going through sickness, some kind of difficulty, consciously bring up the memory of that loved one. With the in-breath, you can say, may you be well. May you be free with the out-breath. Just mentally feel the resonance in the heart. May you be well. May you be free. May you be well. May you be free. May we be well, including yourself. May we be free. May we be well. May we be free. May we be well. May we be free. May all beings be well. May all beings be free. May all beings be well. May all beings be free. And in a few seconds, as you hear the gong, you can gently open your eyes and end this period of meditation. Okay, so that was just a short meditation with a few hints on how we can kind of abide with the open heart. And the encouragement is to make this an emotive experience rather than an intellectual experience. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are. But before that, because next session we'll be talking about the wisdom aspect of the Noble Eightfold Path. Please continue to practice this kind of meditation every morning and evening, about 20 minutes in the morning, 20 minutes in the evening. Try playing around with these mantras. When there are challenging moments that come up during the course of your day, consciously plug in one of these mantras and see what happens to the tone of the mind. And yeah, then we'll invite you to share next week. So any questions? Otherwise, we call it a night. It's already late. Thank you. Yes, Marge.
I was just going to say that that was a perfect way to end, Bante. It just gets better and better. So I'd like to have our participants just join me in bowing 3 times to show our respect and our thank yous. Please join me. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. If there are any questions, please email, use that form, and see you all next week.